See, it starts automatically.
Mhm.
We're just going to let it go. Welcome, everyone. I am always so impressed at people that are just flooding in before it's even 2 o'clock, time to start the webinar. I am always scrambling for my link at the last minute. Look at all these people who are so organized. I'm so impressed. Exactly. Welcome, everyone. We will, of course, give folks that are as organized as I am time to find their link and log on. So, John, how recent is that picture?
Pre-COVID. So the hair is a little shorter, just a little younger. So I'm okay with using the younger headshots though.
Yes, I was in a panel or something recently, and they definitely took not my latest headshot. It was one from pre-COVID. I was probably at least seven years younger than I am now. So that was fine by me.
No complaints.
Hi, Heather. Welcome, everyone. Nice to see you here. As folks are coming in, please drop your name and where you're from in the chat so people can see. It's always nice to see who all is on the call. Welcome, everyone. Anissa, nice to see you here. Hi, Jean. Hi, Chuck. Do my romper room impression. John, you're too young for romper room. You don't remember that. Ooh, Dublin, Ireland. I want to come tour your facility. Ah, Miss Janie, hello. Welcome, folks. We're going to give folks a couple more minutes here. It's just 2 o'clock on the dot, so we'll give folks a chance to find their link. John, I'm going to tell everybody here a fun fact about you that I think is really interesting is that when you travel for work, you always find a live show to attend. So I see the Julian Baker poster behind you, but you have sort of the most extensive experience in live music of anybody I know. And I always get excited to see your list of shows and recommended artists and songs at the end of the year.
It's one of my favorite parts about traveling for work is finding an excuse to get to a live show. Usually it's on a weeknight, which means it doesn't break the bank. It's usually free or $20. But I think
Are they mostly local or touring acts?
a little bit of both. There's been some bigger ones, but I think I'm up over 95 concerts in the past 11 years here with Bounteous Acolyte.
That's really incredible. I love that idea. That's something I think I would love to emulate as I am traveling for work and out and about in the world.
It also takes you to new places you might never go, right? So it's a fun way to explore neighborhoods. And I always look for recommendations from people I'm visiting. So.
Yes. Yep. That's very true. A lot of times you just stick to the restaurant that's right next to the hotel. You get in, you're tired. That's such a great way to get out and see more of a city. I like to see where the people that live in the city are actually spending their time. All right, what time is it? 2:02. We'll give it about another minute for folks to find their links. We still have people coming in here pretty steadily, so I don't want to jump the gun. Hi, Addie. Nice to see you. I'm finding that I'm recognizing a lot of names coming back every month. That's so exciting. I think I met some of you at Refed this year. It's always nice if you're at any of these conferences. Hi, Haley. Please, if you see me, come up and say hello. It might take a minute for me to recognize your name, but I'll get there. And I love to get a chance to talk to people in real life about food recovery. Hi, Megan. All right. Well, with that, I am going to go ahead and get us started. Thank you so much for being here today, John. Really appreciate it. John Meck is actually on the board of Food Rescue Hero, but he is also a really incredible marketing professional, and he has been really instrumental in our local and national marketing and really helping us think about what we're doing. And so we wanted to get him here to talk to everybody else because marketing is just super important. And it's something that you can do really no matter how big the size of your organization or your budget. A few reminders that as we go, we'll answer questions at the end, but please drop questions in the Q&A. If you put them in the chat, it will scroll by and we might miss it. So make sure that you put any questions you have in the Q&A. This is being recorded and we will send out a link to the recording in a few days so you can access it later or go back and check on something. If you saw a great idea and couldn't remember it, you'll be able to get to that, as well as have your colleagues take a look if you want. And then at the end of this webinar, we will provide links for next month's webinar. Or if you would like to have a follow-up meeting with us, we'll have a link for that as well. So with that, I am going to stop sharing and turn it over to John Meck, the Senior Vice President of Marketing for Bounteous.
Thanks so much, Jen. Let me get my screen up here. And we'll just dive right in. I appreciate the time today, everyone. Appreciate you joining. I see some comments. It's great to get out of the heat. Today, we're going to be talking about smart marketing for food rescue organizations. So to start that, let's just take it back one step and let's start with the basics and let's talk about marketing. As we think about marketing, this is something that most companies do in some fashion. When we think about this, if you're a small company or a large company, a small marketing team, a large marketing team, there are huge benefits to be gained by doing it in a way that's smart. We've all heard the phrase, work smarter, not harder. I think this is so important. It's something that I've made one of my mantras in life. And as we think about this for food rescue organizations, it's especially important. We're all on the phone today. We're talking and sharing ideas. So as part of this, feel free to use the chat to communicate as we're going through this, share with other folks. But working with 412 Food Rescue and the Food Rescue Hero Network, I've had the ability to talk to many different food rescue organizations. And we know that there are some general challenges that we're all facing. We've got a lot of different audiences that we're trying to market to. Each of those audiences, different motivations. There's often inconsistent volunteer needs with the unpredictable nature of food rescues. And we're often dealing with limited or shared marketing resources. I'm guessing several people here have marketing as one of those many things listed in their job description. Sometimes it's not the only thing we're working on. And so we need to find a way to prioritize and get more done. And often we're dealing with limited or non-existent budgets. So being smart about how we do marketing is really important, no matter what size you are. If any of these ring true, give me one of those emoji reactions so that I can see that we're listening, and or throw it in the chat so that I know that we're on the right track. A little bit about myself, just quickly. As Jen mentioned, SVP of Marketing at Bounteous Accolade. We're a 5,000 person strong digital transformation consultancy. We help large companies solve problems, create revenue, improve efficiency. As part of this, we've had the great opportunity to work with 412 Food Rescue and Food Rescue Hero, helping them over the years with things like marketing, SEO, and digital advertising. I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm a volunteer with 412 Food Rescue. I've done many rescues, several with my children in the car. It's something I'm very passionate about, and I've kind of lucky to join the organization and contribute in different ways across Food Rescue Hero and 412 Food Rescue. To that end, the team's asked me to share some of these thoughts, and I hope we can adopt some of these marketing techniques for you all to address common challenges. So let's define smart marketing. When we think about what does it mean to do smart marketing, I'm going to give you 3 different things. I'm going to say 1, smart marketing is aligned with a plan. And it sounds so simple. Everything should be aligned with a plan. But one of the biggest challenges we have is just writing it down and keeping track of what we're doing. So I'm going to say it starts with the plan, and I'm going to give some tips for the type of plan we're going to pull together. I think that smart marketing has multiple use cases. So everything we're doing can be used in multiple different ways. We can have an event which we promote on social media. We could use that in an email newsletter that goes out, and we can include photos in an annual impact report. So if we're smart about it, we can take something like a single event and turn it into multiple different pieces of content and ways that we can use just that one investment across different use cases and channels. Lastly, I think that marketing should create durable items. When we say that, we mean it's not just a single thing that happened. It's not just a single mailer, a single article, or a single event. It's something that we can continue to use, we can continue to promote, and there's a place where people can go to find that. When we think about smart marketing, often what I'm talking about is something that's also referred to as content marketing. So let's start with some assumptions and some definitions about what content marketing means, and we'll really try to make it applicable to the groups on the call today. Let's start with some assumptions. I think that every organization has more marketable material than they realize. So we often think of the marketing team as working in one area, trying to promote the organization. But there are things that we're doing every day. There's different teams in the organization that have things that we can work to share that information and promote that to the world. You can think about some of the amazing staff you probably have working closely with you. Wonderful volunteers and bios and profiles, nonprofit partners that are making an impact in the community, some of the goals you're setting or outcomes you're producing. All of these things can be packaged up and shared broadly, whether through the channels that we have, at events, through different mediums. So it's really important that we think through how to take some of the stuff that's happening, that's already being created, and reuse that for the benefit of sharing our message to the world. Lastly, we're going to say having a plan is better than having no plan. Writing it down makes it real. So I encourage everyone to take that to heart. And then lastly, the goal is not perfect. The goal is just to get a little bit better every year. So I said I would define it. What is content marketing? We're going to say that content marketing is creating materials that align with your organization and your themes. It's creating material that answers and educates your audiences. And it's creating durable and lasting material that's easy to find and easy to reference. Some of the benefits here, we can use these pieces of content across multiple channels. We can create derivative works, take one thing like a webinar and turn that into multiple different formats like articles, clips, highlights, quotes that we can use in different places. And we can use that content across different teams, audiences, segments, and stages. Sound good? We've got 2 sides of a coin here. We've got strategy and execution. And before we dive into that, Jen, did you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, so we're doing a webinar, right? We're going to send this out to folks and we're going to turn it into an article. And, we're going to use that in multiple ways. Part of it is we think that this is providing real value to folks, but also it's, part of our overall organizational marketing. So you're aware of Food Rescue Hero. And that's something that John has been really instrumental in helping us realize that, that we have all of this great material that we shouldn't just be doing and then forgetting about it. We can continue to leverage it. So this is a takeaway in action.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to use a couple of examples from 412 Food Rescue, so hopefully you'll recognize some of it. So here we've got a coin and we've got two sides of the coin. We've got strategy and we've got execution. So we'll start with the strategy. And like I said, I think there's 4 key areas. And if you just started a Google Doc and started writing, I bet you can come up with a really great strategy to start. The thing that I've noticed from every conversation is a lot of this is really in your brains, ready to go. But sometimes we just need to write it down in a specific format that turns it into something that we can action and turn into an actual strategy. So as we think about strategy, I'm going to put it into 4 different categories. Okay, we'll start with something like messaging and themes, and there's different models for this. Take this one as an example that I'm sharing today. You'll find lots of different ones in marketing books or different webinars or learning webinars online. What I've tried to do is narrow it down to what I think are the very core things that every organization should be working on. Depending on your maturity, how long you've been doing this, or the amount of resource you have, you may do parts of this or all of this. You may already be doing this today. And if so, just use this as a reminder or affirmation that you're on the right track. So we've got our messages and themes, and this is often coming out of our strategic planning, our organizational alignment, but we have to know what we're trying to say. We've got our audiences, which are the different groups of people that we're trying to address. And within those audiences, we can typically break them into different segments. And lastly, we've got different stages. So different individuals in those different segments and those different audiences are always at a different part in their relationship with your organization. Whether they're just hearing about you for the first time or they've been working with you for years, that changes the way we want to message to them and what information we want to share with them. I'll go through each of these in a little bit of detail. So let's start with messaging and themes. Remember this advertisement, Wendy's, where's the beef? This is what it's all about, right? Every organization should have this written down. And if it's not explicit, let's make it really explicit. These are the things that we want people to know about us. These are the messages we're going to try to get across. If we're thinking about food rescuing, that might be something aligned with how we're impacting the community around us, how we're avoiding food waste and using it for better purposes. It could also talk about the environmental impact that we're making. So you can write that down and say, these are the core messages we want to get across. And ultimately, with all of these different steps, what we're hoping we can do is put some sort of number or percentage on it. If we want to highlight our impact in the community, our diversion from the waste stream, or an environmental impact, how much of those need to be in our marketing? Is it 33, 30, 33? Do we try to skew it in one direction or the other based off of our funding or our audience or community? Think through that and as much as possible, write it down. Here's an example from the 412 Food Rescue Marketing Plan, thinking about how we can decrease food waste and increase food accessibility. It talks through what we're going to do as an organization, and it talks through also different audiences that we're engaging with to help spread our message and expand our reach. So have a section in your plan that talks about your messages and your themes, and take some time to really be granular about it. Again, I'm going to go through these pretty quickly, so bear with us. Audiences. This one's pretty familiar, and we can use a lot of the same information. One of the things I'm passionate about with this organization, with the Food Rescue Hero Network, is the idea that we have similar challenges, similar organizations. We can share information, we can share best practices, we can collaborate. Often we're in different cities, states, and we're not competing with each other. So when we're thinking about our common audiences, these are a couple from, again, the 412 Food Rescue Marketing Plan. But share in the chat if there's other audiences that you're focusing on that you need to be creating marketing material around. So common audiences might be things like the volunteers that we're working with, the funders and the places we're going to get grants, thought leaders, media outlets. You can put influencers in there, or different ways that we're going to get our message out there. You can think about food donors and nonprofit partners, different groups that we're engaging with, and we're trying to make sure that they know who we are and they're trying to, they understand what we're trying to do. So we take this high level concept of audiences, and then we break it down even further into segments. So for instance, here's an example of marketing to an audience that we're calling volunteers. And then within the volunteers, you can see there's a number of different segments. When you think about the volunteers that engage with the organization or completing the food rescues, you can see there's different groups. You can sort them by age, you can sort them by occupation, but each of them have different motivations, have different things about them that are important for us to think through in our marketing and our messaging. So as we think through segments, we're breaking audiences down into smaller categories. We're getting very specific here. And there's a lot of good ways to do this through surveys, through direct interaction with these groups, where we can take that information, write it down, and use that as we're putting together our strategy. Think through what motivates them, what encourages them to volunteer with our organization, in this case, the volunteer segment, and what reasons make them a good fit for our organization. Lastly, in this model, we're thinking about stages. And if you've ever Googled marketing funnels, marketing stages, you know there's a lot of different versions of this. This is just a Google image search. When we're thinking in a sales context, you can think of tofu, bofu, top of funnel, bottom of funnel. There's a lot of different ways to think about it. As a nonprofit, we don't always have to think about the same things, but a couple of stages are helpful to think about. At any point, there are people that don't know who we are, and we're trying to get them to see our name, to understand what we're doing. We're trying to get them to learn more about our organization. We'll put those folks into the awareness stage. For the folks that have heard about us, that have come across us, maybe they've considered volunteering or donating to us, they're in that consideration phase. They're thinking about all the things that are important to them and whether or not we meet that criteria. We've got folks in the decision phase. Maybe they are thinking of they are going to volunteer. They have to decide how much or donate. So we have the decision phase. And then lastly, there's a huge group of folks that we're already engaged with. How do we keep them coming back? Long-term volunteers, long-term donors, making sure we don't have any churn in our food donors or our nonprofit partners. So we can think through these different stages and create content and marketing that are tied to all of these different places. Some of the takeaways here are think through the audiences, those segments, and those stages, take those big messages and those themes and create content that maps specifically to each of those. If anyone's ever met me, they've probably heard me talk about spreadsheets. Beginning of the call, we were talking about concerts I go to, tracking the spreadsheet. Everything's a spreadsheet. This is a great use case for spreadsheets. Think about everything we're doing in a spreadsheet and just different columns to say this is specifically targeting this audience, this segment, or it's specifically targeting someone in this stage. This can be used across the marketing team, our development team, anyone that's engaging with different individuals to say this might be a nice piece of content for me to include. Let's say we're trying to attract a company that we need to work with, and they're trying to decide if they want to donate to us. We can look in our spreadsheet, our repository, and say, here's a webinar we did about this, an article we did about this, and an event that we did last summer. We can take all of that, package that up, and get them to them. So consider for each of these, not just the message that's most relevant, but also the way that we can get to those individuals. We're going to have a very different plan for trying to attract volunteers that are in the student section or volunteers that are in the retired section. So we can plan accordingly based off of what segment they're in and what stage they're in to make sure that we're creating enough content to check the boxes for everyone. And the last one here is the spreadsheet plug, which is that tag everything you're doing so that you understand where it's falling. Everybody seems to love podcasts. It's actually one of the things I don't love about new media, right? So podcasts are out there. I know most people on this call probably are liking podcasts. There's a great podcast called Freakonomics in a book. And there's a great episode they did that said, what is the best exercise to do? I love calling this out because they asked a ton of different doctors. They said, can we statistically prove that there's one better exercise than the other? And the thing is, every person they interviewed, every doctor agreed that the best exercise is the one that you do. And that there's not a huge difference between one or the other. It's really the big determination is whether you're exercising or not. In this case, the strategy ideas that we're putting out here, really the best strategy is the one that you're using and the one that you're executing with. So the encouragement here is to think through these different sections, document it, make a plan, and then track it as you're doing the work. That's the strategy side of the coin. Let's flip over to the execution side. A couple of things that we think about are what types of content do we create and how do we promote that? We've got a matrix that we use called the marketing activity matrix. And I think this is a helpful thing for any organization to adapt. Consider something like this. And think about how it might be different for yourself. But we can think about our organization and say, what type of content should we create? What sort of activity are we actually doing? When we talk about this, we're often thinking about tangible things that have an output. An article is an output. An event is an output. A conference, anything that we can write about, that we can create content about, all of those are different pieces of content. We also have our channels, which are social, email. Those are different ways where we share that content. So for instance, if we are going to a conference, if we're speaking at Refed, that becomes something that we can put on all of these different channels. If we start with the content in mind and say, let's create some things that are marketable, then it makes the other job of doing the marketing really easy because we have great stories to tell. Do great things and then tell everyone about it. In this case, what we're saying is that there's a couple of different items on here that are both establishing credibility and building brand, but then also generating results. Writing an article and asking people to volunteer with your organization is probably not going to generate the type of results that you want. However, if you're at a volunteer conference or you're at a place where you're tabling and you're asking people to sign up, you're probably likely to get a lot more volunteers in that way. The things on the left side are more about building that credibility and establishing that brand. The things on the right side are the things about generating results. So we try to do a little bit in every column. And you think through, what is it going to take to get people to understand that we know who we are, we know what we're doing, we're really good at it, and what is it going to take to actually get some results? You can't do one, you can't just do one or the other. You have to do a little bit of everything all the time. You have to be doing some awareness campaigns as well as some retention campaigns. So in this case, this is a really nice format that anyone can use. Everyone on the call here can have the slide. We think about what are the things that we're saying into the universe. We're shouting, we're publishing on our website, we're putting on social media. What are the places where we're contributing back to the community or the industry? Are we going to those community meetups? Are we contributing to the conversation about food rescues? How about conferences? Where can we get people to assert that we are good at what we're doing or that we should be listening? Can we be on a panel? Can we apply for awards and win those? All of those things really help to build our brand and credibility. The right half, we can put money into it. We can advertise, we can go to conferences, sponsor booths. We can create webinars, downloads, and try to get people to sign up for them. And lastly, we can do really smaller things about in-person events, sponsor dinners, volunteer events, all of those things that have really tangible in-person impacts. So again, this is a spreadsheet that we can use to help us track things, help us make sure that we're putting enough effort into each of these different columns and that we're not overemphasizing one or the other. We think about it, I like to think about creating content. And like Jen said at the beginning, right, this is a webinar, this is a piece of content. Some people are going to watch it right now, watch it live, participate in the chat. But there's going to be people that are going to look for this afterwards, or they're going to stumble upon it. So we have to give it a home. Where is this content going to live? If you had an event, the place that it lives can't only be on social media. It has to be on your website. It has to be a place where someone can stumble upon it, or if they're searching for it, they can find it. The Food Rescue Hero website has a webinar section. You can see all of the past webinars. A lot of websites have articles or blogs on their website. And I'd say almost everything you do is worthy of an article on your website. If you were named the #1 nonprofit in Pittsburgh, that's an article on your website, and then you share that on social media. And what that does is it gives it a home and allows people to find it when they're researching you, when they're Googling you, when they're looking for you. But it also gives you something to broadcast. So we create a piece of content, we store it on our website, but then we use that piece of content to promote it to the world. In the same way, we can use that same link to an article on social media, in an email campaign. We can talk to our development team and have them send that to some of our donors. We can include that in our yearly annual report, which goes to some of our foundations. So there's a lot of different things that we can do when we have great content. How do we execute better? I'm going to talk a little bit more. We're nearing the end, but I love the idea of playbooks. And again, if we're trying to tie back to this idea of doing smarter marketing, we can think about everything on that matrix that we talked about: an article, an event, an award, a conference. You can think about these larger things and say, let's make a playbook for this. It can be as simple as a list of steps, but let's write it down. And let's do the same thing every time we have an article. This is really handy. We have an article, we publish it on our website. Maybe we send a message on Slack or an email to the entire company and say, we have a new article that we've written. Please help us share this on social media. Then maybe we go into social media and we put it on all of our different social channels. We might go into our email newsletter and add that into next month's newsletter so that it's available for them. So we've got all of these different steps to say every time we do this action, we're going to follow the same routine pattern. What we're doing is we're making it very easy for ourselves to do marketing. If it's an article, we put all of the time and energy into creating really valuable content. And then we've got this really standard way that we promote it. We put it out there into the world. I love the idea of triggers and reactive marketing. And so we create triggers for ourselves to eliminate that need for what should I work on this week or what needs to be in our agenda. A lot of the things in our marketing happen to us or they happen automatically. And it's just our job to take that and share it with the world. And let's create open channels of communication with other teams or initiatives. Going back to what we said earlier, we have a lot of great marketing material in our organization that's not coming from the marketing team. When we think about the different teams, development, our leadership, the groups that are working directly with the partners, sometimes we have silos. This is breaking down a silo in case you didn't get the metaphor here. And so we want to work with those teams to hear what they're focused on, to align our marketing campaigns with our volunteer campaigns or our donation campaigns. A great example from 412 Food Rescue, I think was August, was Make a Will month, and they aligned some of the content that went out to both potential donors as well as on the website and social media. All of that fits together. When you think about playbook, I always think about it as pre-work. What are the things we need to do in advance? That's all your strategy. That's talking to different people. That's getting the ideas, aligning calendars across different teams. There's the actual work, which is you have to make the content. You have to write the article. You have to create the thing that we're going to then promote to the world. And there's post work, which is all the fun part about promoting it, highlighting it, broadcasting it out there. So the pre-work, we can think about the strategy. When we create the actual webinar content or the article content, that's where we put all of our higher level functioning and bring in our experts and make that really great. And then the post work is the repeatable part where we just have a playbook and say, this is how we promote articles. This is how we promote events. We think about prioritizing work and how do we decide on what to work on? And we can think about it in two different areas. We can think about strategy and scheduling. At the beginning of the year, you can think about what are all the things I want to do, the audiences, the segments, the different stages. You can plan that out. But then the other side of that is reacting to triggers. So for instance, proactive and reactive. I love the idea of reactive marketing, which is to say anytime something good happens, we do marketing. So if we win an award, that's going to be something we market. If there's a great event coming up that we're a part of, if 412 Food Rescue is attending Picklesburg this weekend, that's naturally going to create marketing for us. There's new food vendors coming on, food donors coming on. So when we sign a new food donor and the Pittsburgh Pirates agreed to donate food, that becomes a piece of marketing for us to celebrate and share. All of these things are really great things that we can just watch out for and say, when this happens, we're going to market it. And that takes a lot of the pressure off of us to always be thinking and always be putting the proactive work into it, is to say, not only am I going to be proactive by creating playbooks, by creating repeatable processes, but I'm also going to be listening for these cues of things that we should be marketing to the world. And I should be able to react really quickly to that. How do we decide what to work on? We need that prioritization. We need to be able to say, we haven't done enough to target our nonprofit partners or to target our foundations, and we need to put more into that. So we have to be able to look at the audiences and messages that we've prioritized. We have to have a way to track that and say how well we've done. And then we have to be able to react accordingly. We can use that to align our resources and our planning. Say, this is how much, if we want to do 60-40 volunteers and donors, then our budget should be aligned 60-40 in that same order. So we need to align all of our planning based off of that prioritization, and then look for the multiplicative efforts of taking our campaigns and looking at how they cross over different audiences, different segments, or different stages. Lastly, I think it's really important to set goals. This can be really simple. This can be bottoms up. We might look at what our capabilities are and say, we want to write 12 articles this year for the website. We want to have 6 webinars in a year. That's a really sort of bottoms up way to look at it and say, this is the activity we want to do. We also want to be thinking about the outcomes or the top down and say, we want to increase our volunteer network by 25%, or we want to get more donations. So setting goals in different areas are going to allow us to measure both our outputs and our outcomes together. In order to track goals like this, we have to have access to data. We have to be able to record that. And again, that's going back to breaking down silos and working across other teams. And the last takeaway here is to only measure what is going to actually help you make decisions. Sometimes we think about things like social media growth or email newsletter growth. It's important that these are trending in the right direction, but we'd rather have very active people following us on social or listening to our emails than having a huge list that no one engages with. So make sure you're looking at the right numbers and say, if we can get this number up, we're going to see an increase in volunteer participation. That's a great number to measure and to follow. A couple of quick takeaways here, and then we're all finished. So, and we've got time for questions at the end. I love the idea of internal celebrities. Think at your organization who we can celebrate, who we can interview, take pictures of, do an article about on the website. Think about the people that can curate stories for us and help us promote them. And think through how everyone in the organization can help do marketing, how they can help share our message, who they have access to, and who they can broadcast that message to. Be purposeful and strategic. A lot of times we just do things because we're used to doing them. But if we write it down a plan and we say, this is why we're doing it, it's very thoughtful. It aligns exactly with the goals we're trying to achieve. That's the best way to move forward. Track your efforts, make sure we're understanding it. Curate the first impression. Think about the shelf life of some of the marketing that we're doing and give your content a home. Make your website or your online presences places where if people land there, they should be able to figure out who we are, what we do, and what the next step is. And so think about how we've made those static things, our home pages, our social media bios, everything like that should be curated so that if someone doesn't know who we are and they stumble upon us, they're going to have a great impression and they know what the next thing is that they should do. And if we want to be smarter, we have to create repeatable playbooks. We have to think about being reactive, and we have to think about not missing the easy stuff. If something good happens, we tell everyone about it, and we do it the same way every time. That really allows us to put some of this work on autopilot and get the most out of all of the efforts that we're putting into it. Thanks for listening. That's a little bit about smart marketing for food rescues. Hopefully some good ideas that you can take away. Happy to answer some questions. There's a lot that we can do with marketing, and I'm encouraged to see some of the great things we've seen from members of the Food Rescue Hero Network.
Great. Well, I know I have a whole bunch of questions, but I see that there is one in the Q&A. So please put your questions in the Q&A. Actually, that was one of my questions. Can you expand upon what a playbook would actually look like?
Absolutely. So I've been a part of teams that are one person large, just myself, as big as 35 individuals. Think about a playbook as instructions that you can give someone else to do it. So you can call it the hit by the bus or winning the lottery file, which is if you're not here, how can someone else do that? Do it with the same level of effectiveness. You can have a playbook for every type of content that you have. So if there's an article on your website, a playbook would look like, make sure you check XYZ, make sure it's got a great title, social image, a meta description. So quality standards, say this is what we care about when we publish an article. Great. Then we say what happens next. What is the post work from that article? The playbook should include where we put it, how we broadcast that. So social media channels, email channels, what are the places we're going to go? Every time we publish an article, we do the same 16 steps. And the playbook is just outlining those different steps to say, these are the things that I'm going to do. Pick the thing that you do the most in your organization. I'm guessing we do a lot of tabling or a lot of event organizations. I know that the 412 Food Rescue recently did a lot of work around their volunteer engagement, corporate volunteerism, where we've got corporations coming in and volunteering. How do we make that really repeatable? Down to the point where I know the volunteer team takes photos and shares them with the corporate donor. It says, can you put this on your social media page so that your network sees our nonprofits branding and communication? So it's coming up with all of those good ideas and turning it into a repeatable process.
And something I like that you said, and I just want to throw this out there, is that it could be as simple as a list, right? It's just a list of what to do. Like I hear the word playbook and I panic. Oh my God. I like, how do I get from I have a bunch of ideas to this is a like a guide? And it really can start with just literally making a list with that sort of what I wrote this down too, because I need to make some playbooks. Pre-work, work, post-work, right? Make a list, divide it out, boom, you've got a playbook.
And you can keep improving, right? It can go from a spreadsheet to a Google Doc to a PowerPoint, but it's something that we can use every time to reduce the amount of time that it takes us to get stuff done, right? We should put all of our time into creating the article or the webinar. And then when it gets to the time for us to do the promotion, we can often reuse the same social media post on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Twitter, slight adapting to it. Sometimes there's a really important community network that we can tap into, or a Facebook group. So we can say, if there's anything that's in the playbook, you can have these little call outs and say, if this is aligned with the student population, go over here and put into this Facebook group, because that's where we know students are getting their content. There's different things like that where we can just build that in and say, follow the steps and make sure we don't forget anything as we're going through the process.
Awesome. Next question. What are some key performance indicators that we can use?
Absolutely. I like to think about this on a 2x2 grid. So again, imagine a 2x2. So on one side, it's outputs, which is say, tell people what you're going to do, measure it, and then tell them how it did. So the outputs are going to be, we're going to write 6 blogs this year. We're going to do several events. And then on the bottom are outcomes. We believe if we do these outputs, we're going to generate more donations or get more volunteers. And so we can track that to say, have we done the right outputs or activities? And the indicators there would be things just like published articles. You can look at things like social media posts, events, everything that we're doing. And then the outcomes, what I would look at, there's stand-ins. Things like website traffic is a great stand-in for something else like volunteer signups, app downloads, or donations. Website traffic is okay because it's generally a leading indicator, but it's more important to get to those very specific metrics, which would be, if one of our goals is volunteer engagement, more volunteers in the system, more people that have downloaded and are using our app, more people that are engaging with our food rescues. I love a great metric that is tracked, which is the percentage of food rescues that go unclaimed is a great one. And I know there was a big effort to say, how do we reduce the number of unclaimed rescues? And that takes an operational challenge, and it's turned into a marketing solution, which is to say, well, we can market it a little bit differently. We can create a network, a place where we can put these messages out there. Hopefully that was helpful.
Do you have a platform that you would recommend to organize content across media outlets? We use Zoho in the past. We've used Zoho in the past.
Sure. I'm not sure that I have a platform. We use a number of different tools for different places. I'm a big fan of tools like Sprout Social, or anything that allows you to schedule in advance, as well as doing some form of listening. Not sure if that's in the same camp as Zoho, but I think any tool that is going to allow you to be smarter and to do more focused work. Ideally, you can set it all up where you're going to do all of your social scheduling at the same time, so that you're not kind of changing brain paths over and over again. And you can plan it out and say, this is a great thing to promote, and I'm going to promote it today, 3 days later, 2 weeks from now, and even as far out as 3 months from now. You set it, you forget it, and it's still working for you.
Right. And that's especially important when you do have a small team and you're trying to work smarter, not harder, is making sure that you have it set up so you can spend your time, scheduling those messages for the next week, or those posts for the next week, instead of having to like interrupt your flow over and over again. I see somebody said Vista Social. They like that. Natalie is using Google Sheets for planning out, Hootsuite for auto post. Buffer is free for the first 3 platforms. So I think there's a lot out there. It's just a
You're right.
matter of doing some homework on. I wanted to ask a question. You had mentioned or call something out that I wanted you to talk a little bit more about. You mentioned, asking your folks on your staff or on your board to post. I think there's this idea that if you build it, they will come. If you post it, they will come. But I come out of community organizing, and I believe you have to do turnout for everything. People won't just show up because you tell them about it. And so, could you talk a little bit more about how you create that? Enough of an audience on your platform so that when you post things, they do show up in the algorithm and they're not swallowed up.
Sure. I think one thing we love to do is both at Bounteous Acolyte, at 412 Food Rescue, and other organizations, it's creating this culture of ambassadors. I think there used to be this time, there are certain brands that are going to post and everyone's going to see it. And we're often not one of those brands, whether you're a B2B brand or a nonprofit. We're not trying to make the next Oreo commercial that breaks the Super Bowl, or we don't have to always be on top of the TikTok trends. What most social websites are trying to get to is relevancy. So it's people that you're comfortable following, you're already following, or that are talking about things that you care about. So we can post as a brand, we can put that out there, but almost more impactful is when we have a really great article. I could send it to you, Jen, and say, hey, Jen, would you mind posting this to your network? And would you mind referencing XYZ? And we can give you recommended copy to share. But if you could personalize it and say, I think this is going to be a really great webinar because I've had these challenges myself in XYZ. The more personal you make it, the more your audience will appreciate it and interact with it. If you take that concept and you expand it to the 30 people in your organization or the 5,000 people in your organization and say, I have all of these individuals posting very custom, very personal messages about this that's going to resonate with their hundreds or thousands of connections. There's a multiplicative effect here where it can really expand the reach in the algorithms. So that's one way to do that, is to engage with the stakeholders. You can start with the most senior or the most connected. I know that if you've gone through a volunteer thing at 412 Food Rescue, you probably know Haley, right? So if Haley's putting it out there, trying to get more volunteers to come to an event, she's likely got those connections that people are going to see that. So you want to lean into all the different folks based off of the audience, based off of the segment, and say, this one would be really good if we could get Alyssa to post about this, or Jen to post about this, or Danielle to post about that.
Exactly. All right. Thank you so much. Are there any other questions that folks have? I'm going to pop up information about our next webinar. If folks want to drop any questions, any unanswered questions into the chat. I know this was a lot. You're going to get an email detailing, or you're going to get an email with a link to this webinar. So if something comes up, you can always contact us later. I love this. I spend an hour a day responding to everyone who tags, messages, or mentions our organization. We want people to feel seen, heard, and appreciated. When we invest in our supporters, they become champions for us. That is so true. That is so great. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and so if you watch this webinar later or think of a question later, you can always reach out to me and let me know what your question is. We have some links in the chat. I dropped them a few minutes ago, but I'll drop them again. There's a link to sign up for our next webinar. We're going to get down and dirty into data next time. It's going to be super interesting. We have our data scientist, Sean Hudson, who's going to be talking a little bit about how we can look at the data that we have and use that to optimize our operations. And this is not, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to do this. It's going to be a way that you can really use the numbers that you have. There's a link to register for that. And then, of course, in October coming up, we have our food rescue conference. you could register or you could submit a proposal to speak at the conference. We're finalizing the speakers right now, but if somebody has something that they're really excited to talk about it, send it to us quickly and maybe we can fit you in. Our conference will, of course, be focused as always on actionable and innovative solutions for food recovery. I love the really lofty ideas, but sometimes you just need to hear about what best practices are that you can make your operations better. So we'll be looking at that in October. So please register for the conference. And I think that's it. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Really appreciate the conference. Thank you for asking. The conference is virtual, so you can attend from anywhere. It's a 2-day conference. It is packed with sessions. I mean, there are 8 hours of sessions every day online. So we really try to make it valuable for attendees. All right. Thank you, John, so much for being part of this webinar. I really appreciate you and all the hard work you do for our organization and your willingness to share with others in the field.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your week. Now I have to figure out how to end the webinar. It always takes me 5 minutes.